All right, everyone, we got to talk about some new cards. The Nightsisters are here with a fury. I have some little bit of information that it looks like Mother Talzin is going to be released tomorrow. This is going to be a pretty fun time because we've already gotten some pretty powerful looking Nightsisters today that we got to talk about. And of course, we have some from the past that are, well, not amazing, but probably reasonable to go ahead and play with Mother Talzin. Cannot wait to see the leader. We don't have it today. As I said, we got some Nightsisters to talk about. But before we do, big thank you to my patrons. Let's dive into our first card in Doom. This is absolutely sweet, by the way. I did not expect to be receiving Doom, but it only makes sense to have Caleb, or not Kanan, but Caleb Doom is his name, but Kanan as a leader working with the creatures. And then we get Doom, 4-cost ground unit, double vigilance, 2/7. And here's the crazy part: when the regroup phase starts, give an experience token to each other friendly non-vehicle unit. This is actually an incredible ability. It just doesn't necessarily make it work in Star Wars Unlimited. Here's the thing. First off, Kanan, if you're going to play Kanan as your leader, you got to play double vigilance suddenly. And that's a pretty big downside because the creatures that we've been seeing so far that kind of work with this whole go wide creature strategy, guess what? Aggression. So you lose out on all the aggression creatures, which is really sad because I do think they actually work with Doom quite well. Having the hidden ability, getting those shield tokens, allowing them to survive until you drop Doom, and then actually start getting a bunch of experience on them actually seems like a pretty interesting game plan. But now you're forced into double vigilance. Can this work with just Doom? I mean, I think it's still possible. Like if I'm just thinking about this and I curve like Ezra into Doom and I'm playing double vigilance, the new Ezra, well, suddenly I attack with Ezra. I make this into a 3/8, which is kind of obnoxious. And then Doom starts the regroup phase and I make Ezra from a 3/5 into a 4/6. Like it can stack up pretty incredibly fast. And then you can just start passing out shield tokens with Kanan. I think there is some potential here. It does have the Force tag as well, which is pretty important. It works with some of the Force synergies and of course is going to work with any of the Force specific cards. So this looks very interesting. The only thing I'd be worried about is the double vigilance. If this was single vigilance, I think that we'd have a really interesting deck concept on our hands where we're going like two katas and Mirnox or whatever, turn 1, turn 2, into Ezra, into Doom, and you have a really strong curve with Kanan as your leader. So I'm very curious to see what other potential double vigilance cards we could get. We did get Hondo, right? Which is another double vigilance card. Maybe you could just drop him in. Remember, it's non-vehicle unit, so it doesn't necessarily need to be a creature. Hondo is, a 4-cost unit. You can go Doom into Hondo, into, getting some experience token on Hondo, and then you can put some shield tokens on. Like there are some some usages of the double vigilance in terms of units. You have Chilton, but in that case, you'd have to go villainy, so you couldn't be playing Kanan. There might be some options here with Doom in double vigilance. That's the only thing, though. Really sweet card, though. I think it has some potential. We've got Ataru Onslaught as the next card we got to talk about. This one, I absolutely love the art. It looks like they went with a little bit more of a realistic style here rather than their typical stylistic approach. And honestly, I am in love with it. I love the stylistic art in Star Wars Unlimited, by the way, but I just think this art in particular looks fantastic. 2-cost event in aggression, ready a Force unit with 4 or less power. Pretty straightforward. We've seen a lot of these like Karugian Turn, Bravado, Keep Fighting, all of which have specific requirements, right? Karugian Turn being mainly for vehicles, Bravado mainly for attacking through units with like Overwhelm, Keep Fighting with 3 or less power but no restrictions on Force units. This one, 2 resources, 4 power or less, Force unit specific. I don't necessarily think this is all that powerful. We've seen a lot of these effects. They really haven't been all that great. Some people have been talking about like in Ray Red, you could play a Taru Onslaught and then potentially go through and heal for 6 in a turn, which you technically could do, but you could have done that with like Keep Fighting. Are you going to be playing Keep Fighting in your Ray Red deck? Like, I don't think so. I saw a couple comments on Reddit with that. And I think even one of my Patreon members mentioned it. I just don't know if it's really going to be a viable strategy to do any of that. We'll see. It's more of a fun concept, I suppose. Just getting a lot of restoring is kind of fun, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a playable card. We'll see though. I get maybe the fourth power actually changes things. Here's where we talk about some Nightsisters, guys. This is a common, and it looks absolutely absurd to me. We've got 4-cost ground unit in Vigilance Villainy, 4/4 Force Knight, right? So Knight is probably the tag that they'll focus in on with the Nightsisters. 4/4 for 4, not an amazing stat line, right? It's okay. It is okay. It is like borderline not good. 4/5s are really what you want to be at with 4 cost, but 4/4 is okay. When played, you may use the Force. If you do, give a unit -3/-3 for the phase. And this is where I think Talzin's Assassin looks absolutely absurd. So obviously, you're going to need to have the Force consistently. And if you are, which based on what we're seeing with the set, it seems like you probably could do that. This comes down and basically kills a lot of the 2 and 1 turn plays. For example, this can kill Battlefield Marine, Sabine Wren, Restored Arcs, Cartel Spacers, Kylo Silencers. All of those die to it. Not only that, but also turn 2 plays die to it, such as 7th Fleet, Lurking TIE Phantom, things like that. Your blue leaders out there. If your opponent just takes a little bit of damage on one of their units, you might even be able to punch up with this. And of course, you could shrink one of their bigger units and finish it off with another one of your units. This looks incredible in terms of a when played ability. And the key part about this is it's when played. It's not something that's like, okay, I have to wait till it dies, or I have to wait till it does something, or on attack, or whatever it is. It is, I play it, I get immediate effect, and I can probably kill your turn 1 or turn 2 play with Talzin's Assassin, and that looks absurd. If Mother Talzin comes with some sort of way to manipulate HP, this thing can be even more broken. But I could absolutely see this being a staple, depending on how reliable the Force is. If it's something that's really hard to set up and doesn't actually give you many options to set up in the first couple of turns, maybe Talzin's Assassin isn't going to make it. But the payoff on this is so good. It's so good for a common that I am very impressed. And I do think it's going to be something that people are going to want to index towards just because of how powerful -3/-3. And remember, you get a 4/4 body left behind. It's like you played your takedown or whatever on your 7th Fleet Defender, which happens all the time. You play the takedown, but then you get a 4/4. It's crazy good. It is crazy good. These types of units, for those of you that play Magic the Gathering, these are the types of units that I'm looking at. I'm like, okay, these are actually playable in Magic the Gathering standard, which is not something that most commons ever reach, right? Like, this is extremely strong, at least in my opinion. And again, it does depend on Force synergies and how that interacts with everything, but I do think it's got some major potential. Really awesome card here. Next up, we've got Karis. It's a little bit harder to see. Let me zoom in here. This one's another Nightsister. We've got 2-cost ground unit in Vigilance Villainy, 2/4, so pretty solid defensive stat line, but also a reasonable amount of power. When defeated, may use the Force. If you do, give a unit -2/-2 for this phase. So first off, it's a 2-cost ground unit, 2/4 with the Force trait. Already interesting. Remember, we have the new bases that allow you to generate the Force if you have Force units attacking. So this is something that, like, if I'm playing this early on, I can attack with it, get the Force, and then maybe use it for her when defeated trigger, or maybe use it for Talzin's Assassin when plated trigger, right? So already I'm sort of seeing a little bit of a deck be built out of just the cards that we've had a little bit of preview on. So really good start there. The defensive stat line means that it's most likely to survive to turn 2 so that you actually can get an attack in, right? 4th point of toughness is a lot harder to deal with than the 3rd point of toughness. Things like Sabine can't kill it. Things like Battlefield Marine can't kill it. Various different units that are played on turn 1 can't quite finish off Karis. But then more importantly, even if it does, if you happen to generate the Force, you might have been able to get even a little bit more value. -2/-2 is pretty impactful, and you might be able to trade up with Karis, which is where it gets a little bit more exciting, potentially. If it doesn't, remember, it still deals with a lot of various things. If your opponent's going to be playing a bunch of cheaper units, like the 1 toughness or 2 toughness units, heck, even 7th Fleet Defender, we go back to this, or Lurking TIE Phantom, they both die to Karis. I don't think the when defeated trigger is as relevant as actually just having another Nightsister and having it be a turn 1 play. If you're going to be building a Nightsister deck, These are the types of cards that I really want to see in a deck that allows me to kind of curve out if I'm trying to use the Force synergy, if I'm trying to use a tribal synergy. Of course, we don't know what Mother Talzin's going to do, but most decks like this that are built around a certain tribe want to be curving out with those units. Of course, the other thing that people have mentioned is like with Thrawn, you could potentially double up and give the -2/-2 again. The only thing with this is the when defeated trigger starts with you may use the Force. And I believe the way this is going to function, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below, because I haven't heard anyone speak about this yet, but the way Thrawn is, you may use the when defeated ability again, which means it's going to ask you to use the Force again. And then you have the -2/-2. But correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. So I'm not even that impressed with that. If it is just you can get -4/-4 divided up into 2 units potentially, I could see this being pretty reasonable in Thrawn, especially since it's just a turn 1 play, right? But then we move into another unit, and I don't know what it is with X today and the past couple of days, but it seems like they are super into it. And by the way, not that I absolutely love the art of this, but I just love the placement of the art for this Anakin Skywalker. For those of you that haven't watched the Mortis saga from the Clone Wars, this is a really, really impactful episode, not only for the expansion of the Star Wars universe, but also just seeing a glimpse of like the stages of how Darth Vader comes to be and how the temptation can happen very quickly. It was a really interesting saga to watch. We have a 6-cost ground unit in Vigilance, 5/7 Force Jedi Republic, no heroism, very important to note. When playing, if there's a heroism unit in your discard pile, heroism card, not unit, in your discard pile, you may give a unit -3/-3 for this phase. And the same thing applies if you have a villainy card in your discard pile. So first off, baseline, 95% of the time, this is going to be a 6-cost ground unit, 5/7, that gives something -3/-3, right? You're almost always going to have either a heroism or villainy card in your discard pile. That's already pretty good. Right? It's not amazing, right? Because if you're comparing this to other 6 drops, you've got things like Wrecker, for example, that I think of, and that's going to more reliably kill something. If you get the double trigger, you suddenly have what I consider a better Luke, to be honest, right? Luke comes down -3/-3 or -6/-6, most often -6/-6. You get a 6/7 body, so 1 extra power. And you get Restore 3, which is nice, okay? Don't get me wrong, Restore 3 is what almost pushes Luke to be better than Anakin, in my opinion, when you don't get the double trigger. But it also costs 1 more. And that's key. The 1 more from Luke is super impactful, because that is a devastating turn to wait, especially since that's the leader flip turn for a lot of leaders. Anakin, on the other hand, the reason why I consider him, if you're able to trigger both of these, better, is because you can divide them up as you choose. It's any unit, and you can give separate units -3/-3, and he comes down on the leader flip turn, which is really critical. Not that I think Luke is a terrible card, but that just goes to show you how I view Anakin. Anakin seems incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. The question is, are we going to find a deck that is able to merge together heroism and villainy cards? It's going to be pretty tough. As many people have mentioned already, really the only deck that does this is the Chancellor Palpatine, and that's not a list that's been competitively viable realistically. It's been like maybe middle of the pack, sort of average leader/deck combination. We saw a little bit of it from set 3 in terms of competitive showings, but it was more so a fun list that combined the 2 aspects. This is very interesting, and I'm excited to see if we are able to pull in a deck that is able to combine these 2 aspects. But if we don't have a leader that kind of makes this possible, I think Anakin's not going to be good enough. Okay, it's still a good card. 6 cost 5/7 for -3/-3 is still good, but I don't think it's quite good enough to play in your decks. The difference between -3/-3 and -6/-6 is massive. -6/-6 almost guarantees you kill something, and in some cases will kill multiple things, whereas -3/-3 is just going to give you a little bit of leeway in a certain turn. Maybe it's still playable. I think it is potentially playable at 6 for -3/-3, but I just don't think it's going to be like an insane card for Anakin here. Very, very interesting though, and I'm curious to see if we're gonna get the heroism villainy combination of deck, and also again, perfect kind of art to choose or perfect art pick from the Clone Wars to make this Anakin Skywalker card. So absolutely love that. And lastly, we have Mind Trick. This one's pretty sweet. We get to see Obi-Wan or Ben Kenobi from A New Hope. 2-cost event in Cunning Heroism. Exhaust any number of units with a combined power of 4 or less. If you control Force unit, those units lose all abilities and can't gain abilities for this phase. Is this something that could potentially be realistically viable in terms of playing? The question I have is, okay, how does it stack up against the other cards that are doing something like this, right? No Good to Me Dead is way better. You don't have restrictions in terms of power. You don't necessarily need to have a Force unit to get the full viability. And most importantly with No Good to Me Dead is it lasts for another turn, okay? Yes, you can do any number of units with Mind Trick, and that can be potentially stronger in the early game, but combined power of 4 or less is going to be very rare. It's going to be very rare. At most, you're going to probably be getting 2 units to be exhausted, and that's going to be even a rare circumstance. This is most of the time going to be 1 unit. And then we consider the other one for heroism, which is Bamboozle. And that's not even necessarily a heroism card, but that's free, and it also bounces upgrades. I think Mind Trick is going to be far weaker than both of those options, and both of those options, well, No Good to Me Dead is in villainy, so maybe you don't want to consider that one, but Bamboozle is in heroism, and again, it is free. It is far stronger in my opinion. Remember, it also can be paid for 2 and also be played to exhaust a unit. Those units losing all abilities and can't gain abilities, is that relevant enough? I do not think so. And of course, you do have to have a Force unit to do so, but maybe there's some synergy with having a Force event in your deck. We talked about, event specific leader that is going to get benefit from just having events in your deck. So maybe there's something there, but in terms of what we see right now, I just don't think this competes with a lot of the other options we have for exhausting units. Oh, and there's one more. I forgot. The colorless upgrade in constructed lightsaber. This one's pretty sweet. We've got a +2/+3 attached to a Force unit. If attached unit is heroism, it gains Restore 2. If attached unit is villainy, it gains Raid 2. And if it's neither, it gains Sentinel. So really, I'm curious to see if we're going to have a unit that is heroism villainy. That would be pretty awesome. Imagine getting +2/+3, Restore 2, and Raid 2. Heroism villainy. I could definitely see a card that is heroism villainy. There are a lot of different options for it. To be honest, Revan would have been a great option. I don't think the current iteration of Revan, like Darth Revan obviously is a villainy unit. Jedi Master or Jedi Knight Revan is obviously a heroism unit. I think post those two, you could consider him a heroism villainy unit. Although I think he fits more in the colorless style. So I'm not sure if you're going to see a unit that has both. Maybe we'll see it in this set. But +2/+3 and Restore 2, how good is that? It's reasonable. We were playing with Devotion for a while in set 1 and set 2 for +1/+1 and Restore. This one gives you a little bit extra stats, but you are restricted to Force units. I don't think that's going to be good enough. Raid 2, that's essentially +4/+3. Again, probably not good enough. I think I'd rather have like Fallen Lightsaber, those types of effects. And same with heroism, I'd rather have Jedi Lightsaber. Sentinel, well, suddenly you're talking about non-heroism, non-villainy unit, and that's going to be fewer and farther between. I'm thinking like Kiadi Mundi, you could put it on and you can have like a 7/10 Force unit with Sentinel. Like that could be obnoxious. I would imagine that most of the time leaders are going to be the things that you're looking at. And I just don't know if this is going to be really that strong. I mean, you could put it on like Rey and make it like a 4/9 and have it have Restore 5, which is kind of obnoxious. Or, she gets an gets an experience token. You can make it be a 5/10. But I just don't see Constructed Lightsaber being all that strong. It's like many other upgrades. I just don't really see it all that much. But that's going to be what we got today, guys. I'm actually really excited about Doom. I think this card's really sweet. I'm excited to go ahead and dive into the sort of creature-based strategy. Taro Onslaught, probably pretty weak. The Nightsisters, guys, they've got some really powerful supporting cards before you even see the leader. Talzin's Assassin and Kara's both look really solid for the deck. And I think with that starting, before we even get to Mother Talzin or whoever else we're getting, I think we got a really good shot at having a competitive Nightsister deck. Again, we have to see the rest of the sets and all that stuff. But the other thing to consider is like all the Nightsisters are probably going to have the Force tag, which means they're probably going to be the most consistent users of the Force synergy. So that's really interesting. Anakin Skywalker, do you think he's going to make it? Can we see a multi-aspect in terms of villainy heroism deck? I'm hoping. I'm really hoping. Mind Trick, is it good enough? Probably not. And Constructed Lightsaber, colorless upgrade, maybe getting some value there. I don't know. We'll see. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed, guys. Nightsisters seeming to be broken, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.